Hi everybody, and welcome to the May episode of Going Wild in the Highlands with Floss and Lou. We've got a lot on, as we always say. But first of all, Lou, I've got a little prezzy for you.
Oh, I like prezzies.
We've been having a fairly challenging few weeks. We've both been busy.
Oh my goodness.
And life has been a bit chaotic.
Ooh,
and
what's going on?
Both of us have lost the plot at times. So I've decided that we need to have some wine with this one.
Good Lord, this is very unusual. What's got into you?
I'm thinking that you need a little bit of cheering up, and that recently your brain's been a little bit befuddled.
Oh,
and that
I
if I
see.
give you some wine, you might let me tell the story of just quite how befuddled you've been of late.
Oh, there's a price.
Yeah.
There's a price to pay for this
There
glass of wine. Oh dear, you going to ridicule me on the air?
I'm not ridiculing you, darling.
Humiliate
I'm telling
me.
a story. So recently, listeners, I was coming down my driveway. I had an appointment. There you are, sweetie. Take a few mouthfuls of
Oh,
that.
I will. Thank you.
Had an appointment. I was
Cheers.
coming down the drive, and there was a car parked right
Oh,
across
no,
the
not that
bottom
story.
of my
No,
driveway.
can't do that.
And I thought, I've got to get out of here. And what has bloody parked their car in front of my drive? I can't get out. So I marched up to the car, and the window came down. And there, sitting in the driving seat, was Lou. And she said, "Aren't you coming with me?" And I said, "Where to?" And she said, "The very important meeting with the MP." And I said, "Which is tomorrow."
Well, we won't say what I said. And repeated several times, many expletives, as I seem to recall.
No, poor Lou. And I then
And it's a big ride to your place.
It is a bit of a drama. Sorry about that, sweetie. But I did have to confess that I had turned up to a doctor's appointment 2 weeks early on the preceding day. So we're not doing all that well.
Well, we're befuddled because we're doing so many things and
That's right.
we're rushing around.
Busy,
little
busy, busy,
beetles.
darling.
Absolutely, sweetie. So busy. So busy.
So one of the things that I did since we last recorded was that I went to Goolanura, and down there, amongst other things, I saw emus. And I just thought, we don't see them that often in the Highlands, and they deserve a little bit of talking about.
We don't see them at all in the Highlands unless you go off to some remote little spot, which you did.
That's right. Yeah. So they're a really interesting bird. And at the time that I saw them, there was a group of about 6. They can grow up to 1.9 metres. And around that time that I saw them, I was posting things on Facebook about attracting tiny birds to your garden, like birds that are 6 and 7 grams in weight. And I just thought how remarkable that both of those things are birds, and that they've evolved somehow in completely different directions. Emus breed in May and June, and the females fight over the partners. They have very sharp claws, apparently, and they will fight for up to 5 hours for the right to mate with a given male.
Really?
Yes.
That's horrid.
Yeah. But I think they might have good reason, because the male is the one who builds the nest and does all the incubation. So the female just gets a quick little bit of attention, shall we say, out of it, lays the egg. In fact, lays more than one egg often.
They lay lots, I think.
Yeah. And then the male does all the work of the incubating and the bringing up of the nestlings.
Yeah, he does work very hard. Very
Yeah.
unusual, really, to see a bird so attentive to young birds.
A male, yeah,
Yes.
that's right. And apparently during that time he loses up to a third of his weight because he just
can't
doesn't
go
leave
out
the
and
nest.
feed because he's got to keep an
No.
eye on them.
Yeah. And so while he's doing all that work, the little floozy is off trying to find the next male to mate with.
Oh, now she's a floozy, is she?
Well, And apparently, quite often, because the female emu has been hunting around for other partners, some of the eggs in the male's nest will not be his own eggs.
Shock horror.
So he incubates the nestlings, brings them up, and then they will stay with him for often up until the next breeding season. So what a hero.
Indeed, indeed. I did tell you the story about finding the eggs, didn't I? A walking friend of mine.
You tell me again.
Oh, it was in Belangolo Forest. I'm sure I've told you this.
Oh, yes, right.
Yes, she
Back
was
in the early
bushwalking.
days of our, yeah.
She just came across a nest of these beautiful, and they are beautiful, blue, large eggs. No male. He must have been trying to put on weight somewhere around the corner.
Yes.
But Langolo's not that far from the centre of Bowral and Mittagong, and is it?
No, I have seen emus on the farmland immediately adjacent to Belangolo.
Yeah.
And I've seen them at Goolanura, and I've seen them out in that jury land out in the water catchment when I was fortunate enough to
I know
be
of them
there.
in Canyon Lee as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of other interesting things that I found out about emus. And one is, you're going to think that I've got a bit of a preoccupation, but this intrigued me. The male emu has a penis and testicles. We haven't covered bird reproduction 101 yet, and most birds don't have any of those parts.
No. Sex with birds is mostly pretty perfunctory, isn't it?
That's right. But no,
Yeah.
the male emu has a penis and testicles.
So you have to make the point that most birds don't.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
There's just a little bit of rubbing.
It's
and
most
that's it.
unusual. Yeah.
Yeah.
And emus serve as an important agent for the dispersal of large seeds. They swallow the seed, they put it through their gut, they walk or run a long distance, and then they pop out the seed with a little bit of fertilizer around it somewhere else. And one of the problems with this was that many years ago, they dispersed the prickly pear in Queensland.
Oh, yes, they would have loved those prickly pears.
So that's my one little quick things I've seen. Emus out at Goolanura. Go out there. Oh, and one other little piece of information that I'd heard before, and it was confirmed for me by one person, is that there used to be an emu farm in Joadja in the 70s, and some people conjecture that the emus at Goolanura may have been released birds from there.
Very possible if it was a failed venture. Yeah. Did you go on a planting day this?
Oh, I've done heaps
Last
of
week?
planting days. Yeah, I've had a great time being out doing that. And one of the things that I learned at a recent planting day is you can get lost in a paddock. We were there in a paddock which had no trees. After all, we were there to plant. There was only grass, but it was a vast paddock, and somehow or other I lost my tools, I lost my companions in one paddock.
Because you blithered off into one part of the paddock where you were religiously, you get into a zone with planting, don't you?
Yes.
Where you're just digging the hole with your little thing and trying not to get mud all over your body. And you sort of pop them in and you put the water in, and then you're off to the next hole and the next hole and the next hole and the next. And before you know it, you're a million miles from where everyone else is putting in
That's
their
right.
holes. Yes,
That's right.
I can see how that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things that we said that we would follow up in the last show. There's been a few things, and I haven't had a great deal of success with following up stuff, but I'll give you a little bit of a report. The stick insect that we saw at Robbo, no ID has come up on that. I've tried a few places, but no one seems to be quite sure what it is. It's definitely a stick insect, but beyond that, we haven't had any further information. The Robertson worm, we asked if anybody could tell us about the Robbo worm, and we haven't had any feedback on that either. We've had a couple of photos sent to us, but beyond that, not much. I gather that not a great deal of research has been done on the Robbo worm. We also had an inquiry from Max on Facebook to have a look into the burrowing blue crayfish, which I'd never heard of. And I wondered if I was having my leg pulled. But I did some research and I found a really old paper which mentions a blue burrowing crayfish called, I'm going to have a go at this, Eustachus darawalus. But that's as much as I've been able to find so far.
There's a crayfish that's endangered
at
Fitzroy Falls. And Fitzroy
Different.
Falls is not a million miles.
I don't think it's a crayfish at Fitzroy Falls, is it? It's some other little marine animal.
I thought it was a crayfish.
I'm not sure. I think we need to move on from that.
Okay.
Let's talk about leeches. I just said that I would do a follow-up on leeches. And I've learnt quite a bit about leeches. Get ready to feel a bit icky, everybody. We have leeches around in the Highlands, as we do in many parts of the country where it's wet and damp. They really like the dark, wet areas near rivers, lakes, waterfalls and so on. Lou and I have each collected some leeches in the last few months. They're yucky things, and the ones that are a problem to us have suckers on both ends. I thought they just had a sucky mouth, but they have a sucky bit on the tail as well.
Well, isn't that the way they manage to sit on that tail? And is it like a little suction pad so it can stay on your skin, or it can stay on anything really, and then wave around its mouth at the other end?
Yeah, exactly. So we see them doing that, don't we?
Yeah, they do wave around.
We're both making horrible faces. So they suck their back end onto a leaf or a bit of vegetation, and we see them in the bush just waving their head around, waiting for a vertebrate usually.
But they're feeling for chemicals, aren't they?
I don't know.
Yes, I think that they sense certain chemicals that maybe we give out, warm-blooded things give out. Right. And I think they can stay for months without feeding before they find something. And you can imagine.
Yeah, they can. But then as you brush past, their front end quickly sucks onto you, and they'll crawl to a little bit of exposed skin if they can find it. And then they suck onto that with their head end and then bite in and start collecting your blood. And I looked at various websites about removing them and things, and one of them said, look, just leave them there. It will only take half an hour to have its fill.
Oh, charming.
I couldn't
They're
see
not
myself
that hard to
doing
pick
that.
off very often, are they? But the thing is that they go on bleeding because they put an anticoagulant into the... That's the nasty bit. And it can be quite painful quite afterwards.
Yeah. So when they bite down into you, their saliva apparently contains a local anaesthetic. So this is why quite often you can actually have them on you and you don't even know. And it also contains the anticoagulant. And what I found out is that we have a medicine which I remember using back in the day that is called Hiridin. And so we used to have hiridoid cream that we put onto people's bruises and things to help the swelling go down. People also use leeches, still actual leeches, as we all know, in medicine on wounds and things sometimes to reduce swelling. But they make hiridoid cream from leech saliva, and then they make a synthetic version of hiridoid as an injectable, which they use sometimes for treating internal clots. So leeches have done us quite the favour. Lou is making the most horrible face. So mostly leeches don't cause any trouble except that they just give us all the heebie-jeebies. And you can, as Lou said, take them off fairly easily. The thing to do apparently these days, what they're saying, is just slip your fingernail or even the edge of a piece of paper under their head end, and you will release the suction and they will just fall away. People don't usually get infection from them, but you can, so just keep an eye on that. People don't usually have allergic reactions to them, but the occasional person.
No, some very strange people, they might get an addiction to.
And lots of my friends tell me that when they get leech bites that they itch for up to a week at a time, but I haven't had any problem with that. So we just advise wear long sleeves, do that horrible unattractive thing of tucking your pants into your socks.
Does it really matter whether it's unattractive when you're out there in the bush?
I note that you don't do it.
Well, yeah, I have to think leech before if I think leech, I do
You
it.
would do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a feeling after having read all this and having had a few on us now that I probably will do it more
Yeah.
often. Because to be honest, I'm not worried too much about what you think when we're out in the bush.
Or how I dress.
That's right. And there's sort of mixed reports about insect repellents. Some websites say that leeches don't like insect repellents. Some say, look, you're kidding yourself. But I think that I'm probably going to be a bit more liberal with insect repellent than I was. And I reckon that'll do us for leeches. So, Lou, I think that one of the things that you've been doing recently is doing some work on phytophthora. We did a couple of reports very early when we started making this podcast about phytophthora. And at that time, various people got back to me and said that was really interesting. It's great to know what's happening to the big cypress hedges and things in the Highlands. Sad, but, at least we understand what's going on. But what can we do? What can be done about it? Lou, can you give us an update on that?
Well, we've taken a lot of advice from some very serious people in the Department of Primary Industries and the Royal Botanic Gardens, and it's never quite straightforward. The trouble with phytophthora is it is this fungus type thing, but it's not a fungus. It's called an emusite, and an emusite is basically a water mold, and it has spores, and the spores swim in water underground. When the plants are getting saturated, they can swim into the roots and cause root rot. And that blocks the transport system of the nutrients in the water getting up into the trunks of the trees, and actually it is fatal. Now, we were particularly concerned that of the tests we did, many of them were on cypresses. Leylandii, Cypress turulosa, not all, but the native plants that we tested seemed okay. But what we do know is there are at least 26 species of phytophthora.
Oh.
Yes. And not all of them are exotics that came in. Some were, but some are also Australian species.
All right.
And between the 26 of them, they can affect absolutely, well, not every plant, but a lot of plants, including eucalypts.
Uh-oh.
So this is a big threat in national parks and places, wild places. And so what we've been trying to discover is really for the land holders, the land users who are using them as boundary fences and shelter belts and wind breaks for privacy as well, what can they plant instead? Because there's a whole gamut of trees and plants that can be affected. And in Western Australia, for example, the jarrah forests have been decimated by phytophthora. And so giving advice about what people can plant instead comes down basically to some really common sense things. To start with, it's not smart really to plant all in a line one plant, one species of one anything. It is much better to have a diversity of plants. That way you can hedge against other adverse conditions as well, like drought and so on and so forth. So ideally, the one-liner does not work well. It can get easily knocked off by a pest or disease, a phytophthora, for example. Equally, it really isn't a good windbreak. One line of trees in a boundary does not actually make the wind. It twists the wind round into a kind of spiral. It doesn't really just lift it and take it over in the way that you would like. So it's better to have, if you can do it, at least 2 lines in your boundary, if not 3. Maybe a tree, a shrub, and a ground cover. Then you get that lift from the wind, and it doesn't curl under afterwards. It just moves on. And so from a windbreak perspective, that is one of the smartest things you can do. It turns out this is one of the smartest things you can do for phytophthora as well.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, for your stock and for your plants, because you reduce the evaporation on your paddocks, and you may get hit by a pest or a bug, a phytophthora, say, or it might be a beetle, but not all the plants, if they're different, are likely to get hit. So this really is a story where it starts with, this nasty little water mold, but really when you start to look at it, the solutions are solutions for so many
several
other things.
Problems. Yeah.
Single problem,
that's great.
including climate change, of course.
Yeah.
So the recommendation really is to plant a diversity of trees and plants, and preferably local, native plants.
Great.
Cypresses are really at the edge of the tolerance level here, and clearly they cannot cope with this inundation of roots. So I would say, if I was a farmer, I'd be giving them the boot.
Oh, very good. Thank you. So that's a potential solution to more than one problem. I like it.
Yeah. In the end, I find it magnificent that really what we thought would be a good idea, it equally works for shelter belts. It works for stock. There are a few problems that I can see landowners might come up with, like it's difficult to keep the grass down, you have to fence it, it's expensive, but I think the benefits madly outweigh
the downside.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Let's talk about things happening in May, and then in a minute we'll talk for just a very short time about greater gliders.
Oh, yes.
Lots happening in May as usual, and every time I read this list I try to not read everything, so I'll try and emphasise the really important stuff. The first one is an event on Friday, May the 3rd, which is going to be about greater gliders. We've got a greater glider expert, Dr. Anna Grassinen, coming down to talk to us about that, and you'll find information about that online, probably at Facebook would be the best spot to go looking for that, or contact us at flossandlou@gmail.com and I'll provide you with the details that you need. Then there's the usual working bees at Stone Quarry Creek, Bush Tucker Reserve. There's a number of Southeast Local Land Services really interesting workshops happening throughout the month of May. They're worth having a look. We'll put our calendar up as usual on our Facebook page so you can check those out in more detail. There's always Mount Gibraltar Bush Care. There's always the Berrima Bush Care. They happen on a regular basis and you can find them on the calendar on our website. This is one that I'm sneaking in, which you could argue is not 100% a nature event, but I really would love to see a whole lot of us get behind this one. And this is a working bee up at Balmoral Village Hall on May the 11th. There's going to be a tulip planting, so that's my justification for calling it a nature activity. But they're needing a whole lot of help with cleaning the hall, doing a little bit of painting and maintenance, and quite a lot of work outside. They're wanting to create a fire zone around the hall. And I just think back to 2019, 2020, we would have done anything. Oh, God, it's so easy for me to get emotional. We would have done anything for our neighbours up at Balmoral, and now they're asking for help. So let's get up there on May the 11th and help them out, please. What else is up here? There's going to be some more Southern Highlands Land Care Helping Hands events. These are where we support people who have properties that are classified as land for wildlife, but they perhaps are not in a position to be able to do the maintenance on those properties. So have a look at the Southern Highlands Land Care Facebook page for information about those activities. And that's probably about it. Check out the calendar on our Facebook page. Thanks. So let's talk about greater gliders. What we're going to do is just talk about them for a couple of minutes because we're not yet experts, but after May the 3rd, we'll know
a lot more.
everything,
We
won't
will.
we?
Well, we will, maybe, but I don't know how much they know already. I think there's a lot of things they're trying to find out about greater gliders.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not that uncommon in the Highlands.
No, despite the fact that I think it's highly endangered they are now, aren't they?
I'm not sure what their status is, but I can see why they're in real trouble because they never come to ground.
No.
They live high up in the canopy. We should describe what they look like, shouldn't
They
we?
look super cute.
They are super cute.
This is another creature that I think needs a marketing manager. We should have greater glider soft toys. We should have greater glider pajamas. We should, Lou's making faces. They are the cutest thing and it would really help their profile, Louise. Bit of brand management.
Yeah, toys. Anyhow, they have lovely fluffy bodies, don't they?
Do.
They're usually brown, but they have a white belly.
Mm.
They have the longest tail in Christendom.
And it's beautifully sort of thick at the top and tails.
Fluffy and so long, just hangs down off this big branch high up in the canopy. That's where they always live. They're always up really high.
And gorgeous ears.
The ears are they're like Mickey Mouse ears, but they're all covered in fluff and fur. And they've got big brown eyes and little cute noses. They are just adorable.
Yes, but unfortunately, we don't get to see them because they are really high in the canopy and nocturnal.
Very nocturnal.
So have you ever actually seen one?
I've seen lots.
Lots? Have you? I've been there when somebody has said, see that eye shine, that's a greater glider. That's the extent
they have
of
a
my
good eye shine
experience.
because when you go spotlighting, that's how you find them, through their eye shine. I can't remember if it's red or something.
We'll know after May the 3rd.
We will.
And so will our listeners if they get to the information up.
Yes. My first ones I saw in Jarvis Bay, I could not believe that animal. And I saw it fly.
Oh, really? So we should
glide.
We said this was going to be quick, so we probably should just give one more little fact. The ones up here, I think, are the size of a small cat, and they have a membrane from their elbow down to their ankle, and they glide with this membrane, and
but
they can
it's not
glide.
a membrane like a bat, which is just skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's furry.
Oh, is it?
And it folds up between their legs when they're, on a tree.
When they've got other things
and
to do.
it folds up in these cute little folds. Everything about this animal is just delightful.
So you've got to come along to the talk. There's a talk on May the 3rd. Look for details on the Facebook page or contact us and we'll provide you with details. And then a lucky few have been able to secure bookings for a Greater Glider night walk. I think that might be fully booked at this stage.
And we'll be coming cognito.
Yes, Floss and Lou will not be officially there. Don't look for us. Okay, I think we can do outro. I reckon that most people could probably recite this with me. If you so here we go.
Can you sing it?
Not this. There was a complaint about my singing in an earlier episode.
Oh,
so I'm not going to do
that was
again.
a long time ago. Before you took singing lessons.
You can find us on Highland FM at 8 p.m. on Monday nights or anytime on their website under podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube where we have lots of gorgeous photos to go along with our chat. I'm not sure how many I'll be able to get of leeches. We'll see how we go. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. If you're not following us over there, please do. Our email address is flossandlou@gmail.com. Thank you, as always, to Highland FM for sponsoring us, and in particular for Adam, Warren and Harrison. And special thanks go, as always, to our silent partner, Louise Docker, who does heaps of work and you never hear a word from her. A big thank you to our contributing photographers, Alan, the two Louises, Linda, Nigel, Mustafa, Anna, Jenny, Tony, Jeff, Angela, Mandy and James. And I I think that's it, isn't it, Lou?
I think it is. I think that's your lot.
We'll see you in
As a
June.
certain gardener used to say, that's your lot
That's
for
your
the
lot
week.
for the month.
In this case, the month.
Bye.
Bye now.